Hi everyone. We'll wait for 5 more minutes before commencing the session. I hope all of you can hear us pretty well.
Hello, good afternoon again. My name is Ron from International Trade Council. For today's webinar, our topic is best practices and challenges of system migration. Just to give you some reminders, our presenter will going to finish all the slides. And if you have question in mind during the presentation, just please type in your question to the chat box so that our presenter will address your question after he finish the presentation. I believe that we can start now. Anyway, all the attendees can still log in while the presentation is ongoing. So I will give the floor to our presenter and I will let them introduce themselves. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Ron. So, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on your locations. I see that we have a global audience here today. I am Harish, the Managing Director of Cresco Tech, and I am here with Mr. Mubashir, our technical head.
Hello friends.
We are talking to you from Dubai office in the United Arab Emirates. Thank you all who have registered for the webinar today. As Ron explained to you, today we are going to discuss about the best practices and challenges about system migration. We will have some time for questions after the end of the webinar. So before we proceed, a brief introduction about our company. Cresco Tech is one of the 8 brands under the Cresco Holding Group. Cresco Tech is a software house specializing in creation of custom applications, interface programming, and implementation of third-party solutions. So on your slides, you can see the companies under the Cresco Holding Group. So let's jump straight into our topic today. So how many of you have come across emails and messages like this? Usually we receive such messages from banks or service providers saying that some of their services will be unavailable during a certain duration of the day because of system migration. And as people, we generally ignore these messages and concentrate on our day-to-day activities. What we fail to realize is the magnitude and complexity of carrying out such a humongous task without affecting the stakeholders and the data integrity. This brings us to a very common question. What is system migration? If you go by the definition, system migration refers to the process of moving an application and its data from one environment to another. While in theory it might seem pretty straightforward thing, but it involves a change in storage, database, and the application as well. Before we dig into the best practices of migration, let's see what are the types of migration. The most common types of migrations are operating system migrations or OS migrations in short, cloud migration, IT infrastructure migration, customer relationship manager or CRM migration, database migration, and ERP migration, which is also known as enterprise resource planner. Of this lot, the most common migration in today's marketing business scenario is the cloud migration. So let's talk about ERP migration. ERP applications are the ones that help you to automate your business process and can sometimes be integrated with other business process applications like HR and payroll. An ERP migration can vary in its complexity depending on the nature and usage of the application. An ERP migration includes migration of business logic as well as data. For example, a business might want to move from their existing accounting application to another ERP accounting application. Some of the ERP applications provide ready-made tools to migrate their information from the older ERP applications as well. Next type of migration is operating system migration, or in short, OS migration. Operating systems are the backbone of any application. It's taken. Without an OS, the application will not have any platform to run on. Nowadays, major companies are renewing their OS every year. For example, Apple comes up with a new version of their OS every year. And some OS are renewed every quarterly. A best example will be Microsoft Windows. And to top it all, a new breed of OS, which is called as mobile OS, is also keeping the developers on their toes with frequent updates in their operating system. So if you ignore migrating to a new OS, sooner you will realize that your applications are no longer working on the older versions of the operating systems. OS migration also depends on the applications installed on it. For example, if you're using an application that only works with Mac OS, for example, Mac mail application, for example, and if you are choosing to migrate to Windows OS, you cannot expect the same application to work in Windows because the application was not built for such an OS architecture. Another factor to consider will be the hardware configuration. We need to make sure that the OS supports the current available hardware configuration in your company. The complexity of OS migration ranges from low to high, depending on the case. Migrating between the versions of the same OS is simple compared to migrating to a new operating system altogether. For example, if you're migrating from Windows 8 to 10, so it's technically simple because it's just an upgrade process. But if you are migrating from Windows to a Mac OS altogether, then it's a different ball game altogether, because you have to consider all the hardwares and applications that are used in the operating system. Now let's discuss about database migration. The database is core for any application, but it is not immune to changes. Sooner or later, the current database will become obsolete or will simply become too difficult to manage. You are then forced to migrate to a more reliable database server as part of the current standards. The applications also regularly ditch support for old and legacy databases so that they can keep their application size slim and future friendly. Another scenario where you might be forced to move to a different database is when your current database size becomes too big for the database server. Database migration can be as simple as upgrading the current database application, or can become complex if you choose to move to a different database engine altogether. For example, moving from MySQL to Oracle-based database servers. A key factor to consider during database migrations are the applications that use the database server as well. We must ensure that the applications are still going to support the new database server you're going to migrate to. The next is cloud migration. Cloud is everywhere. Cloud is the next big thing in the world of technology nowadays. Many of us have either already moved to a cloud platform or maybe we are considering to move. Moving your application to cloud has its own advantages and challenges, and that itself could be a topic of another webinar on another day. But to cut the long story short, the cloud platform is here to stay. First of all, we must confirm that our current application can in fact run on a cloud platform also. Even though the cloud platform ensures that your applications can be accessed from anywhere, you must also make sure that you comply with the local and international laws when it comes to data privacy, which has become a major topic nowadays. Securing the cloud platform from unauthorized access is also a critical part to be considered. Another common type of migration is cloud migration. Sorry, CRM migration. CRM is the bread and butter of any organization. A CRM system can help your company in connecting with your customers to improve the efficiency of the business processes. A time might come when you may need to migrate to a new CRM or at least upgrade your existing one. Upgrading of a CRM is usually a simple task because the developers of the CRM usually take the pain and hassle of upgrading to the newer version, so you don't have to worry about it much. But in case you choose to migrate to a new CRM altogether, it's again going to be full of challenges. While migrating to a new CRM, we must ensure that the target CRM fulfills all your automated requirements which you are currently using in your old or legacy CRM systems. Similarly, the new CRM should also be the best fit for your current IT infrastructure. So that brings us to the next type of migration, the last but not least, the IT infrastructure migration. Like any software or technology, the IT hardware has a lifespan too. Studies show that the products that you purchase and use today have already been developed at least 5 years ago. So often we find ourselves in a situation where we need to change the hardware and infrastructure to suit our business needs. IT infrastructure migration requires proper planning and deployment. Changing of IT infrastructure or hardware may sound simple, but it is quite a challenge because of all the migration types that we discussed earlier prior to this. So, changing the IT infrastructure will affect the other systems that use the IT infrastructure as well, like the OS, the database, the CRM, and all those stuffs inside it. Migrating IT infrastructure is a complex task, but by proper planning, we could drastically reduce the downtime. Now, let's discuss about the migration methodologies. A system can be migrated in different ways, but not all kinds of migrations are applicable for all kinds of system. You will get a clear idea about this by the end of the webinar. A migration can range from simple uninstall or reinstall of an application, or sometimes we can re-engineer the entire system from scratch, like developing something of our own, or we can implement or change to a new software package, or it can be a step like we are refreshing the entire IT infrastructure as well. This brings us to a very common or basic questions. Why do we need to change or migrate the systems after all? In my opinion, change is constant. Everything has and will eventually change. But when it comes to system migration, the most common causes that force you to change are number one, strategical decision from the management, which means that business throughout the world is evolving and sooner or later you will be forced to migrate to a new system in order to keep up with the current business trends and standards. Number two, old application becomes outdated or no longer supported. For example, every system has a life cycle. Even though the developers keep on updating the system regularly to keep up with the standards, eventually the upgrade will slow down and will no longer be possible, and you will then be forced to move to a new system after all. Number three are the legal and compliance policies. So, managing the data within the system has its own benefits and risks. On one hand, you have access to all the information, but on the other hand, you are also bound by legal obligations to handle these data in a responsible manner. Sometimes the way the application is built may not allow you to fully comply with these legal obligations, and because of that, you might be forced to move to another system. A recent example would be compliance of the new European GDPR laws. The fourth reason to change will be the changes in your business requirements. Well, this point is closely related to all the previous points we discussed before, but there are times when your current application just fails to fulfill your business requirements because your business have changed and it grows over time. So in such cases also you might be forced to migrate to a new system. Now let's move to the challenges faced during system migration. An ill-planned migration can be a disaster. The following are the challenges faced during system migration. Number one, choice. The first and foremost challenge is to identify the right replacement to fit your current and future business requirements. This can be a make or break deal in most of the cases. Number two, price. Price plays a crucial role in any decision making. But when it comes to system migration, we have to keep in mind that it is not an expense, it is rather an investment which can give fruitful results in future. Challenge number three will be duration. Well, time is as important as money when it comes to system migration and in IT in general. An ideal migration should be completed in the least amount of time to avoid disruptions of your company's day to day activities. Number four will be data privacy. Again, keeping the data secured from unauthorized access is a huge challenge, especially in case the data is accessible over the internet. This is the point we already discussed regarding during the cloud migration topic. Number five is risks. The process of system migration comes with immense responsibility and risk. There is a constant risk of losing the data integrity during migration, and a slight mismanagement can put your entire operations in a disarray. Challenge number six will be coexistence with your current system. Well, we must understand that system migration is not an overnight process, it takes time. So, the old and new,
Sorry, we just have some system issue. I'm still waiting for them to fix it.
sorry,
Should we continue then?
can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello, yeah, can you hear us?
I cannot hear the presenter.
But we are, hello.
Yes, same here, Constanza. I can't hear the presenter. Oh, I can't. How about the others?
Please type yes if you can hear the presenter. I assume that only some of the participants are having problem. Okay, I think it's only withdrawn. I think others can hear us. I'll continue. So going back to challenge number 6, as I told you, system migration is not an overnight process. It takes time. So for a time being, the old and the new application must run in parallel, and the migration should happen in a graceful manner. Some of us fail to understand the importance of the well-managed system migration, and we tend to overlook some key defining factors, and that causes us to make lots of mistakes. So what are the most common mistakes when it comes to system migration? Mistake number 1 is no planning or roadmap. Getting into system migration without proper planning is a disaster waiting to happen. It's technically it's like driving in dark without headlights. So we should always have a planning and roadmap before we start getting into the system migration. Mistake number 2 is no contingency plan. Even a well-planned migration can go wrong. It is always a wise decision to keep a contingency plan in place in case something goes wrong. It doesn't have to be a very fancy or complex plan. It could be as easy as taking up daily backups of your migration tasks. Mistake number 3, no documentation. Well, confidence is good, but overconfidence is a crime in IT world. Sometimes we take things for granted and we ignore documenting changes of the migration. Documentation not only helps us to identify the cause of the issue more effectively, but it can also function as a knowledge transfer document on later stages for new recruits in the team. Mistake number 4 is no testing. Testing is one of the most crucial steps when it comes to system migration. The complexity and duration of testing can vary depending on the scope of migration. But sometimes we ignore rigorous testing in favor of reducing the duration of implementation. Well, that is a very bad practice and it can backfire anytime. Mistake number 5 is not involving the in-house expert during migration. Well, this is one of the most common mistakes done by the management, and sometimes the management does not involve the in-house team during migration. It is good practice to involve the in-house team from the very early stages of migration. It not only helps them to understand the system better, but will also reduce troubleshooting time in future, because it is going to be the in-house team who is going to manage the system later once the migration is finished. I will now hand over the session to Mr. Mubashir, and he will explain about the best practices for system migration. Over to you, Mubashir.
Thank you, Harish. Wow, it was an informative session, I hope. I hope that everyone has now understood the challenges and the complexity involved while doing system migration. Okay, now let's discuss about some of the best practices to adopt during the system migration. Before we get into the best practices, let me clarify that these are not migration steps in any particular order. These are the points to consider and follow while performing system migration. Okay, when it comes to evaluation of the system, of basically new system, we should consider the following points. We must gather the migration requirements. We must understand data and operation flow. Assessment of the target system is crucial for any migration. This helps us in gathering the requirements and understanding of the data and the operational flow. It's very crucial to understand the system you are dealing with. It's mean when I say system, it's mean your target system and your destination system. For example, let's talk about phone numbers. Some applications allow text data to be placed in the phone number fields. But if you are planning to integrate the application with a SMS gateway, then it becomes a challenge to manage such a rogue data. So you cannot have text and number altogether. The second point is of best practice is build your team. You must understand system migration is not a one-man job. You always should build a proper team for the migration who can assist during and after the migration is completed. And as mentioned by Harish, you should include the in-house members as the part of the migration team along with your outsider experts. Each team member must have a clearly defined role in order to facilitate a successful migration. And the team will be responsible for reaching the milestone set by the management for the migration. Okay, the next topic is the documentation. Yeah, as mentioned earlier, any process tends to fail over a period of time if it is not documented properly. Yeah, many people consider documentation as an unnecessary and time consuming process, but they soon realize their mistake when they get into any trouble. A proper documentation standard must be used to document the entire migration process, and this is always be the best. Always you need to consider this step in every step of your migration. Okay, the next topic is define the scope. Once you identify the data to be migrated, you should define a clear scope of work. Along with it, you should define the budget and resources required to carry out the task successfully. Study the current and target system and formulate a flexible timeline for the project. But always take the potential downtime and worst case scenarios while considering the timeline of the project and have a transparent communication with the stakeholders. The next topic is strategy. Well, strategy and scope go hands in hand. You cannot do one thing without the other. The order in which you move the information from source to target system becomes very crucial. Okay, I'll give you an example for this. If you consider an accounting system, you cannot migrate the account balances of your vendors, your customers, if you have not already migrated the ledger accounts in the first place. But some of you may argue that we can still migrate the information in any order, but believe me, it's not the best way to do it and is far more time consuming. Okay, so the next practice is isolate current operations. System migration is a long-term process. If we planned well, you can successfully perform the migration in a graceful manner with minimum or no downtime. A regular backup of both the source and the target system is always crucial during the migration. And you also must consider that the migration should not affect your day-to-day operation. when we say the backups always give you more freedom to do the migration because it allows you for a small margin of errors. My favorite topic. Never change source database. Okay, let's face the fact. System migration can indeed get boring over time. I'm sure most of the IT personnel, my IT friends will agree with me. Yes, sometime during migration, IT can get a bit too confident, or I must say overconfident, and decided to change the database structure to facilitate the faster migration. Yeah, this could might help us to in the migration, but this can also or this can also be due to the deadlines or pressure from the management and stakeholders. Changing the source database of any system is a big no. You need to understand this, even though the two systems may provide the same sets of features and functionalities, but their database structures are always going to be different. Yep, the database, if you directly change into the database, that might speed up the work, but actually you're compromising on the quality and the data integrity. So you should always say no to direct changes to your source database. Okay, the next best practice which we need to consider is application stack. Having a clear understanding on what application stack the system is built on is key for IT to define the current and the future scope of the system. For example, if your management wants to go to a cloud server, yeah, which is like a norm these days, but the application you're migrating is not built for cloud, it's like for legacy application, a legacy system or something, then you are simply wasting money and resources on a solution that will not be used for a longer period of time. Another instance where application stack plays a very vital role is when it comes to accessing the system. Some systems are cross-platform, which means that you can access it from the Mac, Windows, or even from your mobile device. But at the same time, some applications only work with a specific operating system. Like some applications only work with Mac, some only works with Windows. They cannot work on vice versa. Okay, so this brings us to the next topic, which is use the proper tools while the migration. Some systems are so tightly packaged that, or coupled, you can say that you cannot do any customization in them. But in some cases, the system or the new system allows you to adopt your business logic into the system. If you want to customize your or your current system, new system, you must identify the right tools to customize it as per your business needs. But please remember that the choice of tools strongly depends on the application stack of the system, which we have discussed earlier in our application stack point. Okay, so the next practice is migrate first and optimize second. Okay, by now we all know that system migration is not a walk in the park. A lot is at stake here. We have to beat the clock, we have to be within the budget, we need to maintain data integrity, so on and so forth. But that does not give us the license to meddle with one of the biggest mistake we tend to do during the migration, and that is trying to make changes to the system while we are still migrating it. So completing the migration successfully should be the top priority before we focus on the optimization of the system as per our needs. So the next practice, which is very crucial and it's a very demanding also is best risk and change management. Okay, so every migration comes with its own share of risks. I think you all agree with me. So far, we have already seen that following the best migration practices, we can following the best migration practices can help us to mitigate those risks to a great extent. Yeah, risk management is an integral to data management process. We must make sure that all the data will be easily accessible for any potential audit, and all the information system must comply with the government, industry-wide and company-wide regulation. The next big challenge is the change management and the reluctancy of the company employees to change to the new system. How we can achieve this? Light to intensive training may be required to be given to all the users depending upon the complexity and their role in the system. We must follow a systematic approach to transform to the new system. The best approach is to take it slow and let the user explore and embrace the new system gradually. Yes, that as we mentioned earlier, that your in-house team will be very handy if you involve them in the migration process. So here the in-house team will come very handy during training the staff, during optimizing the processes and so on. Okay, so the next one is test, test, and test. Without a proper test plan, a successful migration is not possible. And you should not test the migration only at the end of the end or the end only at the end phase, but it should be during each and every step. A system migration, as I mentioned earlier, system migration must be tested throughout each phase to ensure the system integrity and the data is maintained properly. Once the migration is complete, a team of data expert should perform a more extensive and rigorous set of tests to evaluate and approve the new system before your users or before your staff start using it company wide. Again, here, if you involve your in-house team in the migration process, that can help a lot. Okay, and once you have finished the testing, definitely during the migration, you might end up doing some mistakes. So I must say no exercise is useful if we do not know if it serves its purpose or not. Similarly, unless we test our migration results, we will not know if migration was a success or not. The key is to identify the mistakes from the test. Definitely, we're all human, we always do mistakes. But for us, we need to identify the mistakes, correct them, and learn them from the mistakes so we do not repeat them again. So remember, mistakes are just the stepping stones towards the optimization. So if you plan properly and execute your plan in the right way, system migration can be a lot less troublesome. Okay, to summarize, a badly planned migration can cost a fortune in terms of data, money, and time. And here we are in Crescotech. Crescotech is equipped with the right tools and expertise to manage the system migration of any scale, be it a simple system upgrade or an entire ERP migration. On your screen, you can find some of the application and services provided by Crescotech. Crescotech is the #1 implementation partner you are looking for in the UAE. We will not only do the interface programming to seamlessly link the new solution with the existing infrastructure, but also design the business process to increase efficiency. We provide complete end-to-end solutions, something which is lacking in today's market. Crescotech is your go-to software specialist. We understand the challenges when implementing a new software solution and will mitigate the risk and lower the frustration that comes with this process. And in the last, all webinar participants will be able to claim a 75% lifetime discount on a membership to the International Trade Council. Please ensure you register as a member after the webinar to avail the discount. The webinar will be emailed to all the participants. You will then have the information to go directly to the website and avail the offer. Thank you, everyone. Now it's time for questions.
Let's see.
Thank you. If you have any question, you can just type in your questions to the chat box so that our presenter can address your questions.
Yep. No questions so far.
Yes, there is no questions so far. I think we're all good. As I mentioned by our presenter, oh, someone is typing. As mentioned by our presenter, we will be sending the slides for all the participants and also for those who registered for this webinar. Yes, definitely. We will send an invite for the next webinar. All right. So I think we're all good
Thank you,
for
everyone.
today.
Thank you, everyone, once again for attending this webinar. We hope you have learned a great deal about system migration. Good day to all.
You can also mail us your queries and we'll be happy to get back to you at the earliest.
Yep.
Our
all right.
email
Thank you.
on the webinar. Thank you once again, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.